Okay, I want to read to you chapter 6 of the Gospel of St. Luke, the Douay Rheims Catholic version of the Bible, the translation. Chapter 6. Christ excuses his disciples. He cures upon the Sabbath day, chooses the 12, and makes a sermon to them. And it came to pass on the first Sabbath that as he went through the cornfields, his disciples plucked the ears and did eat, rubbing them in their hands. And some of the Pharisees said to them, Why do you that which is not lawful on the Sabbath days? Meaning, why do you do this? And Jesus answering them said, Have you not read so much as this, what David did when himself was hungry and they were with him? How he went into the house of God and took and ate the bread of proposition and gave to them that were with him, which is not lawful to eat, but only for the priests. And he said to them, The Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. And it came to pass also on another Sabbath that he entered into the synagogue and taught. And there was a man whose right hand was withered. And the scribes and Pharisees watched if he would heal on the Sabbath, that they might find an accusation against him. But he knew their thoughts, and said to the man who had the withered hand, Arise, and stand forth in the midst. And rising, he stood forth. Then Jesus said to them, I ask you, if it be lawful on the Sabbath days to do good or to do evil, to save life or to destroy? And looking round about on them all, he said to the man, Stretch forth thy hand. And he stretched it forth, and his hand was restored. And they were filled with madness, and they talked one with another what they might do to Jesus. And it came to pass in those days that he went out into a mountain to pray. And he passed the whole night in the prayer to God, in the prayer of God. And when day was come, he called unto him his disciples. And he chose 12 of them, whom also he named apostles. Simon, whom he surnamed Peter, and Andrew his brother, James and John, Philip and Bartholomew, Matthew and Thomas, James the son of Alphaeus, and Simon, who was called Zealots, or Simon the Zealot, we call him, and Jude, the brother of James, and Judas Iscariot, who was the traitor. And coming down with them, he stood in a plain place, and the company of his disciples, and a very great multitude of people from all Judea and Jerusalem, and the sea coasts, both of Tyre and Sidon, who were come to hear him, and to be healed of their diseases. And they that were troubled with unclean spirits were cured. And all the multitude sought to touch him, for virtue went out from him, and healed all. And he, lifting up his eyes on his disciples, said, Blessed are ye poor, for yours is the kingdom of God. Blessed are ye that hunger now, for you shall be fulfilled. Blessed are ye that weep now, for you shall laugh. Blessed shall you be when men hate you, and when they shall separate you, and shall reproach you, and cast out your name as evil for the Son of Man's sake. Be glad in that day and rejoice, for behold, your reward is great in heaven. For according to these things did their fathers to the prophets. But woe to you that are rich, for you have your consolation. Woe to you that are filled, for you shall hunger. Woe to you that now laugh, you shall mourn and weep. Woe to you when men shall bless you, for according to those things did their fathers to the false prophets. But I say to you that hear, love your enemies, do good to them that hate you. Bless them that curse you, and pray for them that calumniate you. And to him that striketh thee on the one cheek, offer also the other. And him that taketh away from thee thy cloak, forbid not to take thy coat also. Give to every one that asketh thee, and of him that taketh away thy goods, ask them not again. And as you would that men shall do to you, do you also to them in like manner. And if you love them that love you, what thanks are to you? For sinners also love those that love them. And if you do good to them who do good to you, what thanks are you? What thanks are to you? For sinners also do this. And if you lend to them of whom you hope to receive, what thanks are to you? For sinners also lend to sinners, for to receive as much. But love your enemies, do good and lend, hoping for nothing thereby. And your reward shall be great, and you shall be the sons of the highest, for he is kind to the unthankful and to the evil. But ye therefore merciful, be ye therefore merciful, as your Father also is merciful. Judge not, and you shall not be judged. Condemn not, and you shall not be condemned. Forgive, and you shall be forgiven. Give, and it shall be given to you, good measure, and pressed down, and shaken together, and running over, shall they give into your bosom. For with the same measure that you shall meet withal, it shall be measured to you again. And he spoke also to them a similitude. Can the blind lead the blind? Do they not both fall into the ditch? The disciple is not above his master, but every one shall be perfect, if he be as his master. And why seest thou the mote in thy brother's eye, but the beam that is in your own eye thou considerest not? Oh, how canst thou say to thy brother, Brother, let me pull that mote out of thy eye, when thou thyself seest not the beam in thy own eye? Hypocrite, cast first the beam out of thy own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to take out the mote from thy brother's eye. For there is no good tree that bringeth forth evil fruit, nor an evil tree that bringeth forth good fruit. For every tree is known by its fruit. For men do not gather figs from thorns, nor from a bramble bush do they gather the grape. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good, and an evil man out of the evil treasure bringeth forth that which is evil. For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaketh. And why call you me Lord, Lord, and do not, and why call you me Lord, Lord, and do not the, and do not the things which I say? Everyone that cometh to me and heareth my words and doth them, I will show you to whom he is like. He is like a man building a house, who diggeth deep and laid the foundation upon a rock. And when a flood came, the stream beat vehemently upon the house, and it could not shake it, for it was founded on a rock. But he that heareth and doth not is like a man building his house upon the earth without a foundation. Again, which the stream beat vehemently, and immediately it fell, and the ruin of that house was great. Wow, there's a lot in this chapter to unpack. This is an amazing chapter. First of all, now again, this is just my interpretation, so don't take it as gospel, but do your own research if you like, but this is what I get out of this. I've been reading this since I was a child, you know. So in the beginning here, I'm just going to go back. He was healing on the Sabbath, right? And that's a day when you're not supposed to do anything, any kind of work. And the religious authorities of his time did just that, did nothing. And he basically said, you know, is it bad to do good on the Sabbath? Of course not. So Jesus healed on the Sabbath. And his disciples were eating corn. Now, by the way, corn is not corn like corn on the cob. Corn is wheat. Corn is actually wheat, okay? The actual name for what we call corn is maize. I don't really want to get into that, but just remember, in the Bible, if it says corn, it means wheat. So the disciples were eating wheat, okay? And that takes work to go out into the field, you know, get the seeds off the top of the stem of the plant, and then, you know, rub it to try to get the shell off, and then eat the inside. That's what they were doing. And they were being condemned, like, oh, you're doing work on the Sabbath. But Jesus said, you know, didn't David do that when he had to eat? He ate the bread that was supposed to be for the priests. So the upshot of this whole thing is simple. The Sabbath is made for people Like, you can't be a slave to the Sabbath. Like, I don't want to mention names, but there's a group of people, I think we all know, who can't do any work on the Sabbath. And they pay other people to put on light switches, go in the cupboard, cook things, because it's a sin if they feed themselves on the Sabbath. This is ridiculous. This is the letter of the law, not the spirit of the law. Jesus said this is absurd. Of course you can do work on the Sabbath. Sabbath, that's necessary. Of course you can do good on the Sabbath. It's for you to rest and think about the Lord, to spend time with the Lord, not watching football all day, because that's not being with the Lord, right? But take care of your families. Pray, read your Bible, go to Mass, say your rosary. That's what the Sabbath's for. And to rest your body, because you'll have labor the next day. But if you have to do work on the Sabbath, that's good. It can be done. That's what Jesus is saying. Then he goes. Then this is the Beatitudes he goes into, right? And he's basically saying, if you're hungry now, you'll be satisfied. If you're sorrowful now, you'll be joyful. Jesus is simply saying, in my opinion, that once we're out of here, out of this world, the things that you didn't get, you will get. Meaning, your sorrow will be gone. You wanted joy? Well, you're going to get it on the other side. And he said the people that had everything, like the rich, not that it's bad to be rich, but the point is they had wealth, and they have their reward here. They're not making any kind of sacrifice. But the people that are suffering are making sacrifices, and they will be rewarded in heaven, especially those who suffer for the faith. That's what he says here. People that curse you because you're a Christian, people that hate you. And there's a lot of that going on right now, because the world belongs to Satan right now. And, there are religions that have a lot of satanic elements in them. They don't like Christians. That's why Christianity is persecuted, because it's true. That's why. If it was a false religion, it would be ignored. Okay? It would be ignored, but it's not ignored. It's persecuted, etc. So Jesus said this would happen. And if you suffer for that, like the first martyrs of our faith, like St. Stephen, was one. St. Cecilia, there's so many, right? St. Philomena. These people were given rewards in heaven for their suffering. St. George. So, understand that. But the Beatitudes are beautiful, and it's just saying that, the first shall be last, the last shall be first. That you have rewards in heaven, because this life isn't the only thing. It goes so fast, right? And then he tells us to love our enemies. That's a hard thing to do. Turn the other cheek, right? If your enemy asks for this, give them the whole shebang. Well, the idea is that if we hate our enemies, we turn into them. Because there's a lot of bad people around, right? Especially the people that control this world, who are, fomenting wars and economic problems and, digital slavery and all the other things that they're fomenting. They're going to get their rewards, those evil people. But if we hate them, we turn into them. So we can't become them. We can't become into the enemy, because then you'll be punished. So don't go to their level. That's what he's saying. Love your enemies, do good to them that hate you. Bless them that curse you, and pray for them that calumniate you. Calumniate means they tell lies about you, right? Because they need prayers, because they're so full of hatred. If they strike you once on one cheek, give them the other. Meaning, the more you look to get back at your enemies, the more you're going to become like your enemy and do evil like they do. Okay? That's what I think he's saying here. And he says, like, if you love people that love you, what kind of a sacrifice is that? If you try to love people that don't love you, well, that's a sacrifice. If you do good to them that do good to you, well, how's that a sacrifice? If you do good to people that don't do good to you, that's a sacrifice. And he says the same thing with lending, right? If you love your enemies, well, then you're really making a sacrifice here, and you're going to grow spiritually, and your reward is going to be great. That's what he's saying here. Then he says, don't judge others, because you really don't know what's going on with their lives, right? And that is true. That is true. You might see something on the outside, but really on the inside, there's something else going on. And he also says to be merciful, because God is merciful. So be merciful with other people. Have compassion. Some people, have evil intention, yes. But Then there are people who just do crazy things because they're under stress or they're traumatized or, they have issues, right? As we say. So we don't know what's in a person's mind. Okay? That's what he's saying here. And be generous, give to others if you have to, because then God's going to give you what you give to others. What you give to others comes back to you. That's what he's saying. And if you're blind spiritually, well, how could you lead others, right? You have to be the spiritual one, the one that's growing, right, into being more Christ-like. And then you can lead others. But if you're blind, how can you lead other people? That's why you have a lot of religious leaders that are really not spiritually enlightened. And they lead people into hell, into the darkness. And then he says this, I like this. He goes, you criticize others and you want to correct their faults, but how about correcting your fault first? Correct your problems, your lack of self-discipline, your addiction to whatever it is, or your, focus on your passions instead of Christ. Whatever your defects are, correct them first, then worry about the person next to you, because you're not perfect. And that's what he's saying. And he says, if you're good, you're going to bring forth good fruit. If you're evil, you're going to bring forth evil fruit. A person does evil. That just didn't happen. That was like, germinating within the person, getting ready to bloom. And everyone's going to know you by your fruit. You do good, they're going to know that you belong to Christ. You do evil, they're going to know you belong to Satan. Okay, and you can see a lot of our leaders, well, they don't belong to Christ, I'll tell you that much. And leaders all over the world, not just our country. And he says, if you have your foundation in him, then your house is built on rock. If your foundation is on the world, and the world praises you because you're a great guy, then, watch out. Because then you belong to the world, not Christ. Because, Christianity is at odds with the world. The values of Christianity are not the values of the world. They're just not. If you start adopting the values of the world, you're not a Christian. You cannot be a Christian. You will never be a Christian. Because if you embrace all the wokeism, that is not Christianity. That's Satanism, disguised as tolerance. That's what that is. That's Satanism disguised as tolerance. And they do it that way to make it more palatable and sucker people in. And there's a lot of suckers because they are suckered in, boy, believing this garbage. But if you are at odds with the world in the sense that your values don't match, your values focus on Christ and his values, then you're going to be, you're at odds with the world. So you're on the right path there. Okay? If you're with the world and you're going along to get along, well, then you're on the wrong path. And that's what he says. Okay? And your house is on unsure ground. And when a storm comes, boy, it's going to collapse. But if your house is on Christ, you're on rock, and when the storm comes, you'll survive. Anyway, this video is long enough, and I'll see you next time.